I don't know if I'm the only one getting echoes, but I have echoes
Yeah,
like
I think
after you
Yeah, I
Cynthia
spoke.
yours
also
is
have
echoing.
echoes from my end. I don't know why it's like that.
I think we can mute ourselves if you're not yet talking. We'll be starting in exactly 1 minute. Palvin, your hand is raised. We'll be starting in exactly 1 minute. So maybe we can try to mute ourselves um, before we start. Welcome to everyone to this webinar and thanks for joining. So we'll be starting in exactly at 7:05 Cameroon and Nigerian time. Okay, we have our host that has joined. We have Barrister Jessica, uh, our guest. We have Barrister Jessica that has joined us. Jessica, thank you for joining. We'll be starting in exactly 2 minutes. So we crave on your indulgence. Please let's be patient while others are trying to join. So while others are trying to join, my name is Cynthia Danze and I'm with the Youth for CSC movement. And it's just an international movement that is based online for now. We work remotely and we are trying to demystify the myths that concern comprehensive sexuality education. We also talk about issues of unplanned pregnancies, teenage pregnancies. We also are concerned with the issue of abortion, particularly safe abortion, which is one of the reasons why we are all gathered here today. So I know each and every one of us have different ideas and ideologies when it comes to abortion services. And I know we have our religious and cultural views, but for the sake of an open mindedness and for the sake of clarity, I am asking us all to keep an open mind to this discussion and let's see how it goes. Let's try to interact, share our experiences, and just learn from one another and disagree to agree at the end of the day. So we'll be starting in exactly 1 minute. It's 7:05 Cameroon and Nigerian time. 7:04 now. We'll be starting at exactly 7:05 Cameroon and Nigerian time. So in the background, we'll be having Cynthia from Youth for CSC and Grace who will be anchoring the program at the level of the chat section. So thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Grace, for the volunteering. We also have Palvin from the team. We have Emanuela. Thank you guys for making this program a success already. So okay, it's exactly 7:05 and we are starting. And for all those that are just joining, once more we say welcome to this webinar. And like the title of the webinar says, unplanned pregnancies, right to safe abortion, and the link to UHC. UHC means universal health coverage. So what I'll be doing generally before our guest speaker, Barrister Jessica, takes over the platform where we'll have an interactive session, I'll be trying to give an overview of these three things so that anybody that is not familiar with the terms can have an idea of what we're talking about. So when we talk about unplanned pregnancies, many people tend to use the term unwanted pregnancy. But in public health, we try to avoid using the term unwanted because you already knew the act or there was already an act that was happening. Whether it was consensual or not, it was an act. So you cannot say unwanted, like it's not wanted. Whether we try to look for a more suitable and a warm approach to this term. That's why we say unplanned pregnancy, because the unplanned pregnancy could be due to several reasons. Maybe you had consensual sexual intercourse using a contraceptive and the contraceptive failed. Maybe it was due to a rape case. Maybe you just didn't plan it. There are several reasons that could have led to a pregnancy coming when it was not supposed to be the right time, or maybe the people that were involved did not plan for that pregnancy at that time, irrespective of whatever they did. Like I said, we're not here to throw blames. We're not here to be biased in whatever thing we're saying. That is why in public health we use the term unplanned pregnancy. We just weren't ready for this. It happened, yes, it's there, but we were not ready. We didn't plan for it. Now, when it comes to safe abortion rights, I'm not going to talk much about that because our legal guest in the house is going to shed more light on that. But the reason why abortion came into play was because we discovered that there is a high case of maternal mortality that is related to unsafe abortion practices. Most of us are from the African continent, and abortion is still not legally accepted. In fact, there are still so many countries that kick against abortion. And because of such reasons, so many people tend to do it the illegal way. We have young girls who go to quacks to get their babies removed. And at the end of the day, they are left with either a very rough abortion, and they now have to go to, they're either rushed to a medical facility to get it done properly. We also have cases where, due to these unsafe abortion practices, most of such girls have lost their wombs in the process. And the worst case scenario, we have deaths due to unsafe abortion. In Cameroon, presently, 25% of maternal mortalities are due to unsafe abortion practices. This is why abortion is on the topic, and we're going to delve more into that as time unfolds. And universal health coverage is one of the SDGs, SDG number 3, and we usually call it UHC 2030 because it says by 2030 we are expecting that everyone, irrespective of their socioeconomic status, should be able to access good health without so much of financial constraint. And good health in this case also means safe abortion services. Good health also means that they should be able to walk into a hospital and be given proper counseling, not just rush to the abortion table, but have proper counseling, everything laid out for whoever is interested in such a procedure before they do that. So, unplanned pregnancy, safe abortion practices, and universal health coverage are all linked. And because universal health coverage is a trendy topic that every country, because by 2030, there are several matrices that have been put in place to make sure that every country in the world should have at least a UHC index that is satisfied, that can be measured and is in, that is universally acceptable according to the WHO metrics. So a country like Cameroon, I'll speak for Cameroon because Cameroon just recently launched their phase 1 of the universal health coverage scheme, and the regions that were targeted are regions with high maternal mortality. And if you want to delve into some of these cases, they are due to unsafe abortion practices, which is why we have abortion on the table. So, having given that background, so that those that are not maybe particularly in the health sector can have an idea of why we are talking about abortion, why we are talking about unplanned pregnancies. I got a lot of controversial reactions when this topic was put out. I got so many attacks personally, and people were telling me it's no matter what, I sympathize with everybody, I stand with everybody's views, but like I said, for the sake of clarity, for the sake of information sharing, let's keep an open mind towards this discussion. So I will dive straight away into the agenda. The program has been planned for 1 hour, and we are really hoping we can stick to our 1 hour program. So it's time for our guest to take over the platform. Barrister Jessica, are you present with us?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, I am here.
Good evening. It's a pleasure for us to have you here. She's a public health lawyer, well seasoned at that, well versed, and she's going to be taking us through this session. Like I said, for the sake of clarity, let's keep an open mind. Let's not be judgmental. Let's not be biased for the sake of information sharing. So, Barrister Jessica is going to be addressing some of these issues from the legal perspective and also from the health perspective. Like I said, she's a public health lawyer. She's Nigerian by nationality. So, without wasting much of our time, the first is going to be an interactive session. So, I'm going to be throwing some random questions, and she's going to try to answer these questions in the most simplest possible way without making us feel like we're into a law course, obviously. So, the first question I want to ask is, what role does access to contraception and sex education play in preventing unplanned pregnancies? What role does access to contraception and sex education in particular play in preventing unplanned pregnancies?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I'll start with defining what unplanned pregnancy is. So, the question is, what is unplanned pregnancy? An unplanned pregnancy is one that occurs without the intention of the person um, to become pregnant. So how can this happen? This can happen in various ways. It can happen due to lack of access to contraception. It can happen due to contraceptive failure. So you can even be using contraception and the contraception fails. And it can happen due to rape or generally just a lack of sexual health education. So the question is, what role does unplanned pregnancy have in what?
In preventing, what role does contraception and sex education have in preventing unplanned pregnancies?
Okay, so for example, we know that one of the reasons why we have unplanned pregnancy.
I think your volume got lost.
Oh, sorry, I muted myself mistakenly. So I said, like I said earlier, one of the reasons why people have unplanned pregnancies, because, for example, there's lack of access to contraception, there's contraceptive failure, or there's just generally a lack of sexual health education, or maybe even. So, if, for example, a person gets pregnant unplanned, like you have defined it, and there's access to contraception, easy access to contraception, like you can easily just go to the hospital or even go to a pharmacy and get contraceptive, or that they are aware, they have the education, they have it even right from secondary schools, even if possible, there are ways that you can even teach a primary school student about sex even nowadays. So, but they are fully aware, or when sex happens, when there's a sexual act between a man or a woman or anybody capable of being pregnant, there's a particular drug that you can take, right? Personally, actually, I don't think that I had comprehensive sexual education growing up. Even up until I became an adult. I think sometime about 2 years ago, I had a friend who was so certain that she wanted to have this IUD on. She's actually a mom, and we got to the clinic, actually, my university's clinic, and we got there and they said, oh, we don't do this IUD, we don't put in IUD without without going through a pregnancy test. So she was like, oh, there's no need for a pregnancy test, blah, blah, blah. I know that I'm very, very okay. I've not had sex in a while. She gave so many reasons, but they insisted on having a pregnancy test. And they conducted this test. After they conducted this test, she was pregnant. But it wasn't, the second line wasn't so bold, and she said, no, let's do it again. And I was telling my friend who happened to be a doctor that no, there's a mistake somewhere, do it again. And he was like, what do you mean there's a mistake? I'm like, do it again. We did it again, and then it was the same thing. And then she was asking me, what drugs do people take? And to be honest, I had no idea. I didn't know what people take. I don't even know. I didn't know, of course, she didn't want the pregnancy. I didn't know what was next. And that was the honest truth. So my point is, even up until the fact that I was in my 20s, I am still in my 20s, I had no idea. Even my friend, who is also a mom, she also had no idea. So, and these are people who are educated, these are people who are well advanced, and these are mothers, because I am a mother and she's also a mother. So my point is, if someone who is in her 20s, who is educated, who has a job and all of that, didn't even know what to do in case of an unplanned pregnancy, how much more a young person or an adolescent, for example. That's why it's important that there's a comprehensive sexual health education, not just in our schools, if possible, in churches, wherever, so that people can know what to do in case of an unplanned pregnancy. I hope I was able to answer your question.
All right. Thank you so much. And I would just like to shed a little bit more light. The reason why we actually say, because many people don't understand, before it used to be just sex education. And the reason why sex education failed was because of the lack of the C, that's the comprehensive in it. Because when you talk about sex education, the way you educate a 4-year-old, the way you educate a 6-year-old, the way you educate a 10-year, a 15-year-old, and whatsoever, it's very different. The approach is different. That is why the term comprehensive was brought about. And comprehensive means age appropriate. So there are different ways in which you can introduce sex education to the different developmental stages of a human being. Generally, I'll give a very practical example so that we avoid being too formal. for I've seen a couple of videos online where children who are in nursery school, we have like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they are being taught about parts of their body, and they're also being taught about the parts that should not be touched. That is comprehensive sexuality education. It starts that young. So you have a little girl who the teacher tells her, or the parents are telling her, if, for example, if by chance any man should be able to touch you in your vagina, you have to report it because it's not supposed to happen. That is comprehensive sexuality education. The same goes for the boys. If a lady or anybody fondles with your private part, your penis, you're supposed to report it because that is abuse. That is comprehensive sexuality education. That is age appropriate comprehensive sexuality education. And that is what we are trying to advocate for. The reason why such meetings are held is because oftentimes we have people who don't want to listen, who don't want facts. Somebody made me that was telling me she thinks, or he thinks, that sex education is how to make more people to have sex. And I said it's a false narrative. Why is it a false narrative? Because we don't advocate for early sex. We don't even advocate for unsafe sex. First and foremost, we advocate for abstinence. But nowadays, how many youths can abstain? So do you now leave away those youths who cannot abstain because of your religious and social prejudice? No, you tell them what to do. And what is that? You explain to them the consequences of sexual intercourse, especially on safe sex practices. Because oftentimes these children, in quotes, like we like to call them, are aware. They know all these things. They hear it from their friends. They have smartphones. There is an epidemic of, when it comes to sexual education, everywhere. They have access to all sorts of information. So if we as parents, if we as elder brothers and sisters shy away from such a topic, be rest assured that they are getting it elsewhere. That is why we advocate for comprehensive sexuality education, because if a girl is fully aware, sometimes she'll be able to know that I need to protect myself in order not to get pregnant on time. Or, like, for example, the morning after pill. Many people don't know the morning after pill, that if, for instance, you get raped or you have unsafe practices, there is something called the morning after pill which you can take. Knowledge is power, and I think that's the essence of this session. So let's continue. Let's talk about abortion. So, Barrister Jessica, I'm back to you. What do we mean? Because when people talk about abortion, there is a lot of no, no, no. In fact, the reaction is so intense. So, I'm asking you, as a legal person, what do we mean by the right to safe abortion services? When WHO came up and said abortion is healthcare, people were going crazy. People did not want to understand what exactly WHO meant. So, as a legal person who is in the health sector, what do we mean by abortion is healthcare? What is the right to safe abortion services?
Thank you so much for the question. So I would answer the question in bits. So I'll answer the question, what is right to safe abortion? And then what do we mean when we say safe abortion is human rights? So safe abortion is a vital aspect or an integral aspect of reproductive health care. What does it involve? It involves terminating a pregnancy that is conducted in a way, it is conducted in such a way that it minimizes harm and health risks to the person that is undergoing the procedure. What is the right to safe abortion anchored on? So the right to safe abortion is anchored in the broader aspect of reproductive rights, which are essential for achieving universal health care. So in general, it's about providing choices for people and ensuring that, and ensuring in providing these just choices, you are ensuring that they are ensuring their health and the well-being of these individuals. So when we say that right to safe abortion, for example, is human rights, what do we mean? First of all, what is the right to life and health? Sorry. Unsafe abortion is a leading cause of maternal mortality, and it has severe health complications worldwide. So in a most recent article that was published by BMJ, I think this person said that 1,320 maternal deaths that were reported in, I think, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, for example, 750 of these deaths were due to unsafe abortions. In 2021, WHO stated that nearly 20% of all global maternal deaths happened in Nigeria. I'm talking about Nigeria, sorry, because I'm a Nigerian. A large percentage of these rates came from unsafe abortions. So in the long run, it means that ensuring access to safe abortion services is crucial for protecting the lives and health of individuals capable of being pregnant. It also aligns with the fundamental human right to life and the highest attainable standard of health. And this is not just recognized nationally, it is recognized by several international human rights treaties. Another aspect of human rights is the right to privacy and autonomy. Safe abortion relates to the right to privacy and bodily autonomy. What it encompasses is that an individual, for example, that I, as an individual, am capable of making decisions about my own body without due interference from other people or even the state, which we know is a cornerstone of various human rights frameworks. Another aspect of human rights is gender equality and non-discrimination. When you restrict people's access to safe and legal abortion, who are you disappropriation? Who does this affect disappropriateness? It affects women. It doesn't affect men. It affects, okay, let me not be so general and say it doesn't affect men because some people can be, yeah, but it affects it. Who does it affect the most? It affects women, right? They are the ones who you're saying, oh, they are the ones whose life is being held back. I want to please permit me to go to a particular case which I saw. 1 second, please. Why I said that who does it affect? Um, in the Christian Lawyers Association versus National Minister of Health and others, this happened in South Africa. This is what the Leonard judge said. He said a woman who is forced to bear a child she does not want because she cannot have an early and safe abortion is no longer in charge of her own body. The law has imposed a kind of slavery on her. For many women, bearing unwanted children means the destruction of their own lives, especially those who are still children themselves, because these children will no longer be able to work, they will no longer be able to study, they will no longer be able to live in ways that are important to them, or simply because they are not capable of supporting the children. He went further to say, even when adoption is available, it does not remove the injury. For many women, they would suffer great emotional pain for many years, even if they have turned the child to other people to raise and to love. This was in the case of Christian Lawyers Association versus National Minister of Health and others. Then there's a particular case, it's a very popular case in Kenya. It's called Federation of Women Lawyers. We call it FIDA Kenya, and 3 others versus Attorney General. In this case, a girl named JMM, this is not her real name, she was defiled and she was impregnated at the age of 14, which led to an unsafe abortion. Eventually, it led to her death. She died from chronic kidney damage. In this case, she was represented by her mother, who challenged the restrictive laws on access to reproductive health care services. And the court held in favor of JM, recognizing the violation of her right to reproductive health and autonomy. So this, for example, is just like 2 cases where that shows to you that when you give people access to safe and legal abortion, you cannot deny, you cannot separate safe and legal abortion from human rights or the right to life, for example, or the right to privacy and autonomy. So I think that will be where I would stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If I could gather a little bit from what you said, you've talked about the right to privacy, you've talked about bodily autonomy, and you've spoken about gender equity. Now, like
So
I said,
I wanted to add, I forgot to
okay,
add freedom from cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatments. So we must note that the fact that we have restrictive laws against safe and legal abortion does not mean that people still don't go for abortion services. We know the fact that the government has said it's not legal does not mean that people don't go for abortion. So what happens is that because it's not legal, they can't go to a proper hospital because no hospital will admit them. Where did they go? They go to a botched hospital. And what happens? They subject them to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatments, which we know the international human rights framework are totally against. So I wanted to add that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. While we continue, please do well for the participants to check the chat section from time to time. We have some of our volunteers engaged in that section. Okay, so Jessica, I'm back to you. Why should abortion be an option? Or rather, when and why should abortion be an option? Because yes, it's true, we've raised some very striking points, which obviously are very much humane because women rights is human rights, definitely. And like you said, the people that are most affected by these restrictive laws are the women. So my question now is to everybody. I think I'm trying to ask on behalf of everybody. We'll have question and answer session. But for now, when and why should abortion be an option?
Okay, so people have different responses regarding the when. Before I get to when, I will start with why. So a lot of times, even sometimes I'm scared to talk about access to legal and safe abortion. I'm afraid. Why should abortion be? Why should why should abortion be legal? First of all, because it's human rights, like I said, because it protects people's life, it protects their health, because it protects their privacy, it protects their autonomy. If JMM, who was 14 years at that time, had access to safe and legal abortion, she wouldn't have died of kidney failure. She would still be alive. We have several people, several women. If the 520 people who have died from unsafe abortion had legal and safe abortion, they will probably still be alive today, because it prevents people from being subjected to cruel and inhuman treatment. Also, social economic equality. A lot of times people differentiate um, access to safe abortion from socioeconomic equality, which is why we had the reproductive justice framework that was developed by Afiana. Oh, but not really developed by Afiana Hagi, but we adopted the Afrocentric reproductive justice framework. So what's the reproductive justice framework saying? It's talking about beyond the right to life, pro-choice, and all of that, we have the socioeconomic part, right? When people do not, like the lineage judge said in Christian Lawyers Association case, where he said that a woman who a woman who many women bearing unwanted children means they would no longer be able to work, or they will no longer be able to study, or because they cannot even support the children in the first place. So many times lack of access to safe abortion impacts those who are marginalized, those who are socio-economically disadvantaged. They don't even have the money, for example, to take care of themselves. You see a lot of people, I've not finished taking care of myself, not just even money, financially, physically, spiritually, economy. Talking from somebody who is a mother, I can tell you that taking care of a child is actually a full-time job. I can tell you for free that taking care of another human being, I've been a mother for 4 years, and even when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking about my child. Even when I'm far away, distance away from Nigeria, I'm calling them, I'm texting them and saying, what's going on? Oh, my child is not okay. I can't even think. So that's how much weight. It's not just about having the children. That's how much effort you need to put financially, especially into raising a child. So when should people have access to safe and legal abortion? So there are a lot of contestations about when people can have, or people should have, access to safe and legal abortion. So I would rely on the case Roe versus Wade. I don't know how many of us know Roe versus Wade, but Roe versus Wade, one second, please, developed a three-way rights framework, right? And in this framework, it says that, okay, in this framework that was developed, it says that people, the government can restrict or restrict access to safe and legal abortion after 24 weeks, right? So they believe that medically, a fetus cannot, I'm not a medical doctor, but this is me saying what I have read, that a fetus is viable at 24 weeks, from 24 weeks. So if a person, for example, has knowledge that she's pregnant prior to 24 weeks, right? And in the first few weeks of the pregnancy, she needs to have contraceptive access to safe and legal abortion or abortion or SRA child services, for example. I believe that at that time, when the person is knowledgeable, knows that I am pregnant and I do not, this pregnancy was unplanned for, I am not willing to be pregnant at this time, I cannot take care of the pregnancy, then people should have access to safe and legal abortion. We also know that even after 24 weeks, there are situations whereby carrying a pregnancy to term affects a woman's life. It becomes a risk to her life. So a situation whereby she has to choose between carrying on the pregnancy and letting the pregnancy go, I believe that at that point soon, a woman should have access to safe and legal abortion. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister Jessica. I like the fact that you're actually quoting law and you're quoting facts, because my biggest problem with people is I hear say. In Cameroon, we say I hear say, meaning word of mouth from the streets. You are just talking about street discussions. You have no legal backings, you have no official documents, or you have no scientific backings to whatever you're saying. That's why we are trying to delve into this legal thing, so that whatever we are saying is not based on feelings, it's not based on how we think it should be, it's what the law says, and then how we can individualize all these things. So just to add from a medical perspective, we can also allow, like, abortion can be permitted, like you said, in the case of malformities. Normally, medically, you can only be able to access to be able to know if a fetus full features have fully developed at 6 months. That's past 24 weeks. So sometimes at 6 months, you get to discover that this child has a malformity. Maybe some limbs are missing or there is something. And always the medical people tell you this child has malformities. At that point in time, it's very okay for the lady to decide. I'm insisting on the lady because she's the one carrying that baby. Most oftentimes you hear families say no, give birth to the child and take care of it. And then when that child is born, the burden is on the parents. Those who were there to cheer you up to give birth to that child are nowhere to be found. The economic burden, the financial burden, and most especially the psychological burden of that child with malformity is left to the parents and sometimes the mothers. So, in such a case, such a lady should not be denied abortion services. We also talk about child marriages. It's a very common practice in some African countries where children as young as 10 and 12 are sold off. I like to use the term sold off without fear of contradiction, because these children are actually being sold off. Most of them are sold off to pay debts that their parents have accumulated, and they use these children as a means of payment. And then you find a 12-year-old who gets pregnant. And because of the patriarchal system, the child is forced to have this child. Many of these children develop what they call fistulas, where you find them passing out urine without they have urine incontinence because of this early childbirth. I'm sure we have medical professionals in the background. So these are some of the consequences. Whereas if that child, because that girl is a child, if the child had the right to decide that I do not want this pregnancy, then they could have actually been able to terminate it. So in as much as we try to mix feelings and we try to mix religion, let's also sometimes try to be logical. I will emphasize again, we are not encouraging people to go for abortions. We're not encouraging people to go and have fun and then later think because we are advocating for abortion, they can freely do it. Rather, we are saying that in cases like this, such women should be allowed to have abortion care. Now, I would like to conclude also with healthcare workers. The stigma from healthcare workers is it's a very big problem in the healthcare industry. You find a teenager or a young girl who is coming for maybe contraceptive services, like trying to find out if they can take contraception. Those people gossip. They gossip and they tell you, you are just 25. What are you doing with this thing? So you are now engaging in sexual practices. So this is what you people do. They send you to school to go and learn, and all that stigma, the person shies away and goes home. The person eventually gets pregnant and comes back to you. You are the first person again to still condemn that child. So healthcare workers will have a big role to play when it comes to managing unplanned pregnancies and abortion care, because I believe I strongly believe that if we stop stigmatizing young people from accessing sex education and contraceptive services, then most of these pregnancies will not even come to play in the first place. So, without wasting so much of our time, I'm still with Barrister Jessica. What do you think about abortion trauma? And do you think that somebody who has done the first abortion will most likely do another abortion or will most likely do series of abortion? So there are two questions in one. What do we think about abortion trauma? And somebody who has done one abortion, do you think there's a likelihood for them to do many more abortions? I don't know if Jessica is with us.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I like to answer questions in bits and in bits and pieces. So first of all, I will talk about abortion trauma. So again, I would ask, when you talk about abortion trauma, what does it refer to? So abortion trauma is can be explained as a range of psychological and emotional responses that individuals who may have undergone an abortion, for example, might experience. I want to highlight that reactions to abortions are individualized, very highly individualized, and they can vary. So while many people may feel relief and may not experience significant psychological distress after an abortion, others may differ. They may undergo various emotional and psychological challenges. So abortion trauma can manifest in several ways. It can be a range of emotions like sadness, guilt, grief, regret, or even a sense of loss, right? And it can be as a result of personal, cultural, or religious beliefs about abortion. Maybe you go to church and then it happened that at that time when you just finished is when your pastor is telling you about how hellfire is surely your portion. So it can come from that. It can also be psychological. So you can experience depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, among several others. Your second question would be that the fact that, okay, I wanted to add that there are also physical symptoms, although they are less common. The emotional symptoms are more prominent than physical symptoms, but you have people who are tired, they lack, they don't have appetite, and people who may just be tired, they may just be complaining. Every time they are always complaining and all of that. So we also have that too. You asked that the fact that the fact that a person has had abortion, does it mean that they would, sorry, you said what?
Is there a high probability that somebody who has had a first abortion will go for a second, a third, and a fourth? No.
So, like I said, when it comes to abortions, they are highly individualized, right? And several complex factors play. So, there's no medical reason why a safe, legal, and first abortion would indirectly cause an increased likelihood of future abortions, right? I don't see how that works. However, when a person performs or undergoes unsafe abortion, especially in a non-sterile condition or without proper medical supervision, which is the most cases as a result of highly restrictive laws we have in Africa, this can lead to complications that might impact reproductive health and future pregnancies, right? So we also have behavioral and social factors. So one of the key factors that influences the likelihood of subsequent abortion is contraceptive use. If people don't have access to contraceptions, how exactly are they going to prevent further abortions? If there's no comprehensive sexual education, how is unplanned pregnancy or intended pregnancy, how is it going to reduce, for example? If people don't have access to education, healthcare resources, for example, of course, they are more likely to experience repeated unintended pregnancies. We also have psychological aspects. The experience of a first abortion can impact future sexual and reproductive health decisions. Basically, the point is that it's highly individualized, and it still depends largely on the people who have access to contraceptive. Do they have comprehensive health education and a host of other? But medically, there's no inherent medical reasons why a person who has performed a safe legal first abortion would cause an increased likelihood of future abortions. I don't see it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, if you have questions, you can just write them so that at the end of the day, you can ask your questions, because we're trying to not overuse the time that we have. So, in trying to address this thing, I also talk about. I don't know much about if there are such services, but I think pre and post abortion counseling services should be key. Now we are talking about mental health. Mental health is the biggest killer of the 21st century. In fact, it's the biggest killer nowadays. People are more scared of people used to be scared of HIV, malaria, all those things. But now mental health is claiming the lives of young people more than before, even old people as well. So I think if we can introduce pre and post abortion counseling services, it's going to be highly beneficial. Not just the fact that somebody tells you, okay, maybe your baby has a malformity, okay, you were raped, I think you should do an abortion. But there should be an expert. That's why we are lobbying for so much sexual and reproductive health and right experts, because these are the people that will probably be the best position to explain to you, to counsel you before an abortion. Because there's so many things. Some people feel guilt, like the barrister said. You feel like you've just murdered somebody, you've taken a life. Sometimes you feel and ask yourself, what if I had given birth to this child? What would this child have become? There are so many things that can actually disturb your mind and your peace after an abortion. But if you receive proper pre-counseling before that abortion and proper post-counseling, I think it's going to go a long way. Most of us in Africa, we don't believe in mental health. Even though mental health is still killing people, some of us are still very adamant. And we have this ideology that Africans are strong people. You're strong. Nothing should move you. Mental health should not move you. But I can assure you that most of us have had mental health breakdowns on several episodes, and we've healed ourselves. We've picked ourselves back up, and not everybody's that strong. So if we can be able to introduce pre and post abortion care counseling services in our health systems, it's going to be highly beneficial, especially in the case of maybe stopping a recurrent abortion care, because some people can abuse things. Like she said, it's on an individual level. Some people feel like if I did it the first time, I can do it the second time, I can do it the third time. And now let me also emphasize on the males, because we have men in the house. Yes, some men take to also abuse this fact and tell you, okay, you got rid of it the first time, we can always do it and you can always get rid of it. That is why we are talking about comprehensive sex education, because both males and females are involved. Okay, so we are continuing. The timekeeper is already hinting me that we are using most of our time, so I'm still trying to stay within the limits. Now, my question again back to the barrister: what legal considerations exist regarding the rights of individuals to make informed decisions about their own bodies? Is there like a legal framework globally that supports this abortion care service or bodily autonomy, that if somebody wants to make reference to, because the essence of this session is also to learn and get new information. So is there like any legal framework, accepted bodily autonomy, like globally? I've heard something of the global gag, I don't even have an idea. I'm yet to read about that. Law is not my strength. But since you're a legal expert, can you like enlighten us? Are there like legal frameworks that you can cite to be able to back up some of the things we're discussing? Let it not be that we're just discussing in the air.
Okay, thank you so much. So when it comes to legal framework, right, of course, we have internationally international laws and conventions. But the thing about, I'll talk about Nigeria, for example. The thing about these international laws is that they have to be domesticated, for example. So the fact that Nigeria is a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, for example, does not automatically mean that it's what the convention has said applies to Nigeria. So it has to be domesticated in our laws before it can fully apply. But when it comes to international laws, of course, we have several international human rights treaties. We have the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights, which talks about disabilities. We also have Article 23, for example, of the CRPD, guarantees respect for the home and family, which includes the right to decide freely and responsibly on the number and spacing of children. So what is sexual and reproductive rights, for example? It means that a person has a right to decide, a person has the right to safe sex, to decide the number and spacing of children. So which is what Article 23 is saying. But does our Nigerian law, for example, recognize that you have the right to freely decide on the number and spacing of children? You have the right to your reproductive rights. You have the right to you have the right to safe and legal abortion, for example. It does not, because even our criminal code, for example, criminalizes that. And I think that there was I think some weeks ago, I was asking a colleague of mine, I was writing a paper, and I was asking my colleague at work, her name is Chioma, can you check for me what the criminal code, for example, talks about abortion. And I think that was when she told me that it was 15 years imprisonment for doctors who perform abortions on people. So my point is, of course, we have all of these international laws. We have the Maputo Protocol, we have several other international legal framework, but does it automatically transcend to national frameworks? It does not.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that, like you said, they need to domesticate these laws, and it boils down to the fact that most of our laws are built on religion and culture. Religion and culture play a big role in making some of these laws, and I think we need to go back again to the drawing board, especially the legal people, and try. The reason why we are humans is that we are not robots. We are flexible. Times are evolving. Things are changing. So some of the laws also need to be reviewed and reformed. And I also like the fact that you talked about the right to decide the spacing of children. Most of us are from African homes, and the women don't hold this right. This right depends on the mother-in-law, on the husband, or the sister-in-laws, or the family-in-laws. Now we have family-in-laws, as people are beginning to quote it. So it calls for all of us to be reasonable sometimes. That is why sometimes you hear people say, before you get married, discuss this issue of how many children do you want to have, because some men still believe that the number of like more children brings them good luck. You have people these days having 4 children, even sometimes the woman doesn't want to, but because of family pressures, the mother-in-law wants more. Or maybe a woman has 3 girls and the mother-in-law and the husband is like, no, we want a boy, we need an heir, we must have a boy in the family. All of this, and sometimes you find some of these women in the last pregnancies, they have so many complications, so many of them lose their lives, and the list goes on and on. So the right to be able to decide on how to space children, I think women's rights in that domain needs to be respected. Okay, let's continue. Barrister Jessica, in the case maybe where there is lack of evidence of a rape, for example, how is this case of sexual violation is investigated and tried? Let's say somebody was raped and then there's no proof, there's no evidence. We cannot even, like, it's just the person saying that I was raped. Maybe we've done a medical test and there's nothing to prove it, but the person insists that they were raped and that they've been violated and now they get pregnant. How do you advocate for such a case as a legal personnel?
Thank you so much. Criminal law is not my forte, but but yeah, let me say that investigating and trying cases of sexual violation without concrete evidence presents significant challenges. However, the fact that you don't have concrete evidence, it means that the court now has to heavily depend on the credibility of the victim's testimony and any other circumstantial evidence. So how, maybe in the case of absence of physical evidence, we know that then the survivor in this instance has to provide a detailed account of the incidents. If there's also forensic evidence, maybe where immediate physical evidence is lacking, you can get forensic experts to maybe gather some form of evidence. This can be in form of maybe clothing, bedding, or any other items that might have DNA or other trace evidence. If the survivor, if the if the perpetrator, yeah, the perpetrator is the word, is somebody who is close to the survivor. We can have maybe communication records like text messages or emails. And we can also have situations where we call in expert witness, such as psychologists, to provide more context. Then, even though they may not be direct witnesses to the assault, we can have corroborative details, like someone can confirm parts of the victim's accounts. Maybe someone says after the assault, for example, she became so emotional, she became erratic, she was always getting angry and stuff like that. However, I must emphasize that when it comes to criminal cases, the threshold is proof beyond reasonable doubt. So it's not, you have to prove that what you're saying beyond any like beyond reasonable doubt, that okay, even though it can be difficult, but it's not impossible. Like I said, it just depends on the credibility or the weight of the survivor's testimony.
All right, so this is our last discussion question that I'm putting to you right now. What are some of these organizations or advocacy groups that work to protect reproductive rights and provide resources for individuals facing unplanned pregnancies? Like, do you have any ideas about organizations or advocacy groups? Because the essence of the session is to inform people. So maybe somebody here knows somebody that's going through such a case. So do you have any idea of maybe some of these organizations or advocacy
Yeah, we
groups?
have we have different organizations. We have Planned Parenthood. Um, we have I think UNFPA. I don't know if they give you um, legal support or anything, but I know that they work globally to improve reproductive and maternal health care. I think we have PPG too. We have Center for Reproductive Rights. We have SEHAD. We have Anahaki. We have quite a number of them, so you can check them out on their various websites.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll be moving to question and answer sessions. But before we dive into that, I would just want to thank everybody that has been on the call so far. And I hope that we've been able to meet your expectation in some way. And just to let us understand that we're in a social media era, please do not keep quiet, especially in the case of rape. We always advise people, no matter the situation, do not keep quiet, because a lot of people sweep these cases under the carpet, and it goes just like that, and you find them sometimes committing suicide. Please do not keep quiet. If you have a problem, speak out. There are so many people that will be willing to help you. There are so many cases that we do not have an idea of, but people have spoken out and they've received help, they've received support. So please do not keep quiet. If you have an issue, you can always reach out. And I would like to reiterate again, we are not here to promote people going for abortion. No, we are not here to say go and have fun and then you can slide into a doctor's office and remove the pregnancy. No, we are here to make people aware of the different options that they have, especially in cases like this, like the ones we've discussed. That is what we are trying to say. And that is why we say abortion is health care, because the life of the mother is very important, especially in those cases. So I can see some hands up, and I'm going to start with Dr. Bless. You can ask your question. If your question is directed to the barrister, you can just say, I'm asking this to the barrister, and then you ask the question. I think I saw Bless. Oh, he just left. I think maybe connection. Okay, so we have Layu. Okay, Bless is back. Okay, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for the talk. And I suppose I'm one of those people that you already mentioned um, are going to try to be open-minded in this session. And I bet you I really tried. I really tried, but I'll just maybe just say a couple of things. But I want to just start with a question. Um, when I listen to everything that's been said, I think I try to imagine a society where most of these things that you say are applied. And what I want to ask is, how would you feel as mothers if your, daughters 10 years, 20 years later have slept with 50 men and have an average of 20 abortions? How does that sound as a society?
So I think the barrister would like to take that. Then I can come in.
Wow, I like to believe that the daughters did not have the sex alone. You know, she had them with
No,
men.
just for the girls. We'll talk about the boys. Just for the girls. Like, how will you look at them?
I would look at that. How would I look at them? I would look at them normally. Sex and sexuality is not something that should be shrouded in silence. How would I look at them if, for example, because they have no access to safe and legal abortion, like JMM, for example, they died of chronic kidney disease. At least if she's still alive, like Christians will say, they have opportunity for repentance, right? Let's say, for example, she's doing it because she's doing it because of whatever reason, let's say, for whatever reason that society may think. But if she's alive, right, if she has access to safe and legal abortion, there's opportunity for redemption, right? As let me go the other way. But if, for example, she could not have access to safe and legal abortion, she would then be like JMM, who died of what? Chronic kidney failure as a result of unsafe abortion. Again, I want to highlight the case of the Christian Lawyers Association, where the learned judge said a woman who is forced to bear a child she does not want because she cannot have an early and safe abortion is no longer in charge of her own body. The law has imposed a kind of slavery on her. For many women, bearing unwanted children means the destruction of their own lives because they are still children themselves. Remember, safe and legal abortion is not just for adults. In the case of JMM, she was 14. She was a child herself. But because they will no longer be able to work or study or live in ways that are important to them, or because they cannot support themselves, she's what? She's forced to bear a child she does not want. So my response would be, I perceive that you would want me to respond from a point where Christianity. So I would say, at least if she
Not
has
necessarily. Not
okay,
necessarily.
okay, if she has access to safe and legal abortion, a child who is alive or your daughter who is alive, no matter how she is, a mother, I'm a mother, I would always love my children. So a woman who is alive, a child who is alive is still better than a child who is dead. So like I said, let's say that, for example, I'll be happy, I'll feel very normal that she has access to safe and legal abortion because she's not dead. She's still
Um,
alive. Let me say she has a chance at redemption. Thank you.
okay, Dr.
Good.
Blaise, 1 minute. Let me try to hop into your question.
Okay.
The very first thing as a person, the very first thing I will be very curious about, how come 15 abortions? Where did she get it wrong? With 15 abortions, there is a problem somewhere. And this is where we need to be looking at what exactly is her problem. Why the recurrent 15 abortions? Because there is something I always tell people. The generation that is coming, as they call them Gen Z, it's a very tricky generation. It's going to be difficult to handle because they are exposed they're exposed to a lot of how do I call it, to a lot of information, so maybe this child has access to contraceptive sex education. Maybe they're aware of all these things, but they still decide to go the wayward way. And like she said, sex education goes both ways. The males are also involved in it. She didn't get pregnant on her own. Somebody got her pregnant. And this is where we are trying to say the sex education is there. Both of them are aware. But now, coming to 15 abortions, what exactly is the problem? How did she get to the stage of having 15 abortions? Is it that she's comfortable having sex with whoever she wants to have and then decides to go and terminate the pregnancies because there are maybe rules and laws that guide her in that aspect? Or is it that maybe it's her own choice, like we say, because the biggest gift and the biggest danger that has been given to man is the issue of choice. So is it that she has the choice and she feels that because I have this choice, I can constantly walk into a hospital and demand abortion care? If I were to have an interaction with that person, I would want to find out exactly what the problem is because I would be shocked. for a young person to have 15 abortions. And if you were my daughter, I don't know, I would really, really have to sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk with you and find out what exactly is the problem. Why have you had up to 15 abortions? Is it that you just have you love the hospital, or maybe the surgeon is your crush, or maybe you just fancy doing it over and over? There should be a problem, and I will be interested in going down to the root of that problem.
Good. Thank you. I think it actually takes me really nicely to the second question. And it's a good thing that you've already mentioned that it's a problem that if you find a girl, or if it becomes even at the problem where at the national level, the average number of girls that have had the average number of abortion and a girl as high as 20, which is what will be leading, which is what will obviously happen when laws like this are passed. Now, the next thing is we are clearly seeing that this is a cause and effect thing. We are trying to solve the effects or the results of whatever abortion is going to cause. But I think somebody who's had 20 abortions, the accumulation of trauma that the person would have had after that, I don't know how medically they are going to approach that. But then I think that if we are going to talk about sex education, one of the things that people have to emphasize the responsibility that comes with it. And if somebody is free to choose, that person should be ready to take responsibility for their actions. I don't think that we can preach choice and we do not talk about the need to enforce the responsibility that comes with the choice. It is not the choice to kill. Abortion actually is killing. It's murder. I think nobody can really deny that. I really don't care about the 22 weeks thing. Me as a scientist, life begins when the egg fertilizes. Now, if you have laws that have, I know that the laws have been quoted here. Laws are flawed. Laws are not written in stone. And in this case, we can clearly see that when something has a potential for life, that is life. It's like saying that you can kill somebody in coma just because the person is not functional, right? And if we don't talk about the responsibility, enforcing responsibility, allowing people to know and be very, very conscious of the responsibilities that come with this, people would just go haywire with the other thing. And I think that things like this encourage that, right? It is true that all the laws, that there are laws, but I see those laws as fundamentally flawed. I don't see any scenario where society becomes better when people are not taught the response, they taught how to be responsible for their actions, but they are given options where they can kill and go scot-free. And sincerely, the trauma that comes after that, I really don't know. You mentioned that there's a lot of trauma that comes after abortion, but I don't think that an unwanted pregnancy is solved by adding trauma on the individual. And also, by the way, when you've done abortion once, there's a likelihood that you will do it again. There's information about that in the US. Half of the women that have had abortion second time, they've had it first before. So I don't want to I don't want to take time from other people. So that was just all what I thought I could chip in.
All right, thank you so much for responding. Like I said, it's always everybody has an opinion. We have the right to your opinions, and you've raised some critical issues. Of course, we have to take it more. We have to be more intentional. It's not just about throwing that there are existence of these laws. We also have to tackle the cause of why people even get to the unplanned pregnancies and all that. Okay, so Layu, can you ask your questions? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you clearly.
Thank you, because I'm on a transit. I might actually have lost some noise at the background. All right, I'm Dr. Layu Donatus, a reproductive health expert and an expert also in family planning and contraceptives, a public health expert as well. It was an interesting discussion from Jessica. I can really say that she actually touched most of the pertinent issues around the law, regarding the law. But I will want to come from the medical perspective, just to throw some more light before I ask my questions. So I just want to let you know that in Cameroon, the Ghana Obstetrical Association has a stand as what concerns abortion, and it's very clear. Unfortunately, these laws are not made public, but we have to be conscious to distinguish between the medical abortion and the illegal abortion that we are talking about. In whichever case, unplanned pregnancies, meaning that the parties involved in the pregnancy do not want to keep the baby. Looking at the context of Cameroon, we know that Cameroon is around 49% of Christians, and you know the stand of the Christian church as regards to abortion. So in French, we say that c'est déjà l'homme qui va devenir. C'est déjà l'homme qui va devenir. I'm supporting what Blaise has just said, which means that in the regards of the religion, which most of us are part of, the Christian community, we see it as it is often depicted as a crime. The yalom kiva deveni means if there is a fertilization, there's a conception that takes place, it means that that already is a life that is developing. And there's a lot of controversies around this. And I would just want to also talk.
Your voice is getting lower, Dr. Donatus.
Okay. Can you get me now?
Yes, we can get you now.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that to add some more flesh into what the legal expert has explained, to say that here in Cameroon we are not looking at it as just 22 weeks, but life begins from actually 16 weeks, where we have the fetal heartbeat, the first fetal heartbeat and movement. So here we are looking at it in a perspective of the church. Okay, that said, there was a question that is there a likelihood that someone who has committed abortion will have multiple abortion? I would say that yes. In the recent study that was carried out, actually showed that um, without contraceptives and without post-abortion care, that means an abortion that has been procured illegally, the lady, the girl in question, often falls back to the guy or to the perpetrator of this act, because most of the reasons, the underlying reasons for these abortions are, in our context, is poverty. You know the context in Cameroon now, where there are internally displaced persons everywhere. Feeding is becoming a challenge. There are increased prices of basic commodities, and this is pushing the average a young girl who is a student, who is not having something, who is still struggling to survive. You will find out that they will still continue to depend on this person, and then more subsequent abortion is there. However, in the public health sector in Cameroon, there is the post-abortion care that has been provided to all primary health care facilities in the country. Unfortunately, this is not often the case. Unfortunately, these young ones are not going for contraceptives. A lot of these are happening in Cameroon, and I can tell you these are some of the situation we find ourselves in. And then, looking at it from the legal perspective, you will see that most of them will not take this up because they don't even know where to take it. They don't even know what to do, and that is where the psychosocial support comes in. So I happen to have worked with the United Nations UNFPA in Cameroon when in Boya, more precisely, when this war started around 2018. I was the reproductive health expert for Boya, And I can tell you that what I saw is is more precarious than even what we are having now. And then the situation has amplified thereafter because most of these women need help. The young ones need help. The the unplanned pregnancies is not, and some of these were even, you could see that were even within the family. That is where it gets more complicated. A child that leaves, for example, the BLM to come and stay with an uncle in Boya, and the mother is dead. Some other brothers have been killed during the armed conflict, and then this child has to be impregnated by the uncle living within her roof, and repeated abortion has been committed over and over. I do accept that there is a challenge and an issue we have to bring back to the table, the issue of psychosocial support and mental health that has to do with this abortion. So, without taking much time, I will say that I want to ask the question to lawyer Jessica. My first question is that the I know that the laws differ in terms of context. If we are just looking at just the aspect of international human rights, the context of which a United Nations Charter that have been signed, we also have to acknowledge the fact that there are customarily laws, laws of the societies that govern the societies, and more people are inclined to uh, what their customs are, what their beliefs are, and this is a challenge. Is there any way that these laws are globalized and that have the same course of action that can be applied in every context? That's the first question. And then, secondly, I would want to know if uh, sufficient legal awareness is being created, especially to the adolescents, because uh, especially to the adolescents. I am saying this because my PhD thesis was on needs of contraceptive of modern contraceptive use in Cameroon amongst married women, and the results were alarming, and that thesis suggested maybe an SMS method, a kind of mHealth for more sensitization and advocacy. This also platform is also an advocacy, and I think that youths for I'm getting it wrong. This platform is also an advocacy platform that we can use to reach out to many
Okay,
more people.
thank you, Dr. Donatus. For the sake of time, Barrister Jessica, can you answer the question? Because we have barely 10 minutes left.
Thank you so much. I would answer the ones I thought that I heard. So I don't think there's no specific international human rights treaties that applies globally to to um, to every nation. Why? Because we have the concept of state sovereignty. What we do have is people who are sent or to a specific law, but even to a specific international human rights treaties. But even when they do, when they are state parties to these international human rights treaties, like I earlier said, it does not automatically apply or become binding on the particular country, for example. Why? Because we have the concept of state sovereignty. So these things still have to be domesticated. So we have some international human rights treaties. We have the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which emphasizes the right to the highest attainable standard of health. So we know that when there are restrictive abortion laws, this could be argued that it violates these rights. We also have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, particularly specifically called CEDAW, popularly known as CEDAW, which states that which provides that states should ensure that women's right to health, including reproductive health and safe motherhood, is protected. We have the ICCPR, we have the Beijing Declaration, we have the Maputo Protocol that I've mentioned before, and We also even have the Convention on the Right to Child. Why the Convention on the Right to Child does not explicitly address abortion, it however emphasizes the right to health, and this could be interpreted to include reproductive health services. I didn't get the last question, but I heard something about, is there enough information? I don't know if it's right, but I would say that I do not think that there is enough information talking about the concept of safe and legal abortion. I think that there's still opportunity for more sensitization. There's still opportunity for people to know more, which is one of the reasons why I'm grateful that YCSC organized this webinar. So I hope that I've been able to answer the questions at least. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. I saw just one hand, Palvin. I saw your hand up. Please, can we just quickly ask the question? I don't know if Palvin is still with us.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, can you quickly ask the question? We have just like 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you very much to all the speakers. So amazing, Dr. Abino. Sorry, Barrister Jessica. All right. I would like to ask a question with respect to the fact that considering that it's not a case of rape or a case of abuse, but a case where a teenager gets pregnant as a result of maybe let's say not no use of contraceptive, or maybe first time of those kind of teenagers play, and this teenager gets pregnant, and the parents talk the teenager into having an abortion, probably taking the person to a hospital to get rid of the baby, and maybe to get rid of the pregnancy, and peradventure the whether the process was safe or unsafe, well, let's keep that aside. But then after that scenario, there's a probability, don't we think that there's a probability where if this same teenager is faced in future with such an occurrence in her life, she could probably conveniently go in for an abortion even without the knowledge of her parents, like not minding how legal or illegal or how safe or unsafe, probably because of maybe the reasons given to her by her parents in the past, or probably because of maybe shame and something, and could lead, don't you think that it could lead to probably more abortions in the future?
Thank you so much for the question. I think that somehow it had been addressed, but I'll just quickly say this. Psychologically, the experience of a first abortion, right, can impact future sexual and reproductive decisions, which is where access to counseling and support services can help individuals make informed decisions. We also, like we earlier mentioned, talked about providing comprehensive sex education, including information about contraception and reproductive health. When people have adequate or comprehensive information about contraception, everything doesn't have to lead to abortions, right? You can use contraceptives. This is key in preventing unintended pregnancy. So education is key to make, especially it can empower teenagers and young adults, helping them to make informed decision. I have a case that I would probably tell you to go and see, which is something that the court had mentioned in South Africa. It's the Christian Lawyers Association versus National Minister of Health and others. So you can look at it and see what the court had said concerning this. I hope that I've been able to answer your question, however remotely. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. And the last question, we have Cynthia, the last question for the session of today. Can you unmute yourself? Cynthia, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, hello everyone. Good evening again. My question actually will be addressed to the barrister. Okay, and the question is this. In any case where someone, gets an abortion done, and of course it's illegal, probably the person gets it done in Nigeria and there's an aftermath, this trauma going on, and the person decides to go legal and sue. Does the person have a case? That's what I want to know. Is there a case somewhere in there? Is it viable that the person can sue and it works out?
Oh, thank you so much for your question. It's of course you can sue, but you're also an accessory to the crime, right? So you also be arrested. So I'm going to talk about this particular case. I'm just going to talk about it briefly. And this happened in Nigeria, in NS Atta versus the states. In this case, the disease consultant, consulted the appellant, who was just a health center superintendent, but he paraded himself as a licensed medical practitioner. Anyway, she got to the appellant's residence, he examined her and confirmed her suspicion that she was 3.5 months pregnant. She proceeded to secure the abortion. And then, however, she went with her friend who left her at the time of the operation, and by the time her friend came back, she met her friend lying down motionless. Anyway, long and short of the story, he was trying to coach the lady in question in this case died, and the appellant, the person who paraded himself as a medical practitioner, was charged, and he was convicted of murder and sentenced him to death by hanging. I wanted to emphasize that I previously stated that in section 228 of the criminal code, it provides that any doctor that provides a miscarriage, in this case abortion services, to a woman is guilty of a felony and is liable upon being found guilty to imprisonment for 14 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for those that stayed on the call. We've exhausted our time limit. And if you have any questions, please, you can just leave the questions at youthsforcsc@gmail.com. We'll consult with the barrister and we'll be able to provide answers to your questions. So thank you so much, Barrister Jessica, for accepting our invitation. Thank you to all the participants I've seen in the chat group, especially Sally Tabe. I've seen you've been of great input in the chat section. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us, and we look forward to more amazing sessions. So we'll get the closing remark from Chegwi Grace, who is a midwife and a volunteer at Youth for CSC, and then we will close the session. Grace, can you unmute yourself? You're muted.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It was really an interesting exchange, and I think each and everyone who has been with us has learned enough so far as unplanned pregnancy, right to safe abortion, and the link to universal health coverage is concerned. And as we said, we are still expecting your questions. With time bound, we're not able to answer to all the questions, and other suggestions are welcome. Thank you.
Do we have any participants that has a closing remark? Just 1 minute. Anybody in the chat section? I think Salitabe, you've been very smart in the chat section. Can you give us a closing remark, and then we close the session? I don't know if she can hear me. I don't know if she's where she can. Can Sally give us a closing remark? Can anybody in the chat section or in the background give us a closing remark? 1 minute. I'm seeing so many people here.
I want to suggest someone. Can I suggest Dr. Ifeanyi? I don't know if Dr. Ifeanyi Toko is available, though he's on mute. I'd like to suggest him because in the chat room, he did post something, a link or so, that will direct us to the statistics that we're looking for. But other than that, I would really like for him to say 18 or 2 before we come to the end of the session. Thank you.
I don't know if we have Dr. Ifeanyi still with us, or I don't know if he's where he can have a chat. If not, maybe the closing remark can be dropped in the chat section and we'll read it out. Dr. Ifeanyi, are you with us? Are you still with us? Okay, I think maybe he's not where he's able to talk, but like you said, he's been a valuable asset in the chat section. So officially, we've come to the end of this section of this session. Thank you to everyone that joined, and we look forward to interacting with you on different platforms. So have a good night and have a lovely weekend to everyone.